other relevant information for this meeting are available for the public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. Please remember your words and actions should be chosen carefully, and members are reminded that speeches are limited to 3 minutes. The Council is streaming the meeting on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be made available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record the meeting, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourself so that anyone who intends to record the meeting can be made aware. There are none. To ensure that the recording quality is maintained, could members please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum, and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Welcome to all those in attendance. I now ask Mrs. Gibbons to introduce the officers.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning all. My name is Kelly Gibbons. I'm the Development Management Service Manager. To my right, I have Josh Evans, who will be presenting item 6, Katie Jones, who's the local highway authority today, and Joshua Bailey, who will be presenting item 7. Online, we have our legal representative, Mark Sorrentino. Thank you.
We now go to item 1 on the agenda, apologies. We have received apologies from the following councillors: Councillor Polly Andrews, Councillor Dave Bolter, Councillor Jack Cowardine and Councillor David Davis and Councillor Gennard. Name substitutes. Item 2. Councillor Frank Cawthwaite is acting as substitute for Councillor Davis. Councillor Liz Harvey is acting as substitute for Councillor Dave Bolter, and Councillor Bartram is acting as substitute for Councillor Andrews. Item 3. Declarations of interest. Please indicate if you wish to declare an interest, and I will call each councillor in turn. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 6, the applicant's family is known to me.
Thank you. There are no other declarations. Then I move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October 2024. Are the minutes of the meeting approved? Please can you indicate? Those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Abstentions?
2.
Yeah, 3. Not present at the last meeting. Right, we'll now go on. Chairman's announcements, I have none. We'll go on now to the first application, which is if the members who are public speakers wish to take their places at the table. Thank you. Somebody trying to get in. How's it going? Oh. Right. Can I now... The application before us concerns Sapness Farm, Woolhope, Herefordshire. Retrospective erection of 2 pairs of stables and wood chip turnout paddocks at Sapness Farm, Woolhope, Hereford. I now ask our officer to make the presentation, Mr. Josh Evans. Joshua.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. I would like to thank those who attended the site visit yesterday. The application before you seeks retrospective permission for the retention of 2 stable blocks and wood chip turnout paddocks at Sapness Farm, Woolhope. The application site, marked with a red star on screen, is the focus of the proposal, and I would draw your attention to the update sheet, which clarifies the status of the additional unauthorised structures present on the site. Please note these structures are outside the scope of this application. On the left of the screen, you'll see a map showing the land owned by the applicant. The application was originally presented to Planning Committee on the 31st of August 2022. At that time, it included 11 prefabricated stables and a turnout paddock. However, the committee deferred the decision to gather further information on ecology, manure management and hydrological impacts. Since then, a material change has occurred. A local development certificate granted under planning application 231322 now allows for the retention of 7 stable blocks and the concrete yard which it sits in. The current application focuses solely on the 2 stable blocks highlighted in green on the central image and the turnout paddock located to the northeastern part of the site. The images on the screen display the elevations of the stable block. These stable blocks cover a footprint of 45 square metres each, with a dimension of 7.01 metres in length and 3.38 metres in width, with a ridge height of 301. Here we see images of the stables within the complex. From left to right, the images progress through the stable yard, with the rightmost images showing the principal elevations. The images show the views from the public right-of-way, the stabling complex and the western boundary of the site are also depicted. Notably, the buildings are not visible as they're enclosed within the structures already approved under Planning Consent 231322. Consequently, the landscape officer's initial objection is no longer applicable. The retention of the 2 stable blocks do not represent an adverse impact upon the character of the wider setting, as shown by the bottom left image and the right images, with the established vegetation effectively obscuring the stable blocks from the views. The stables are proportionate in scale and harmonise with the existing built form on the materials on site. The proposed wood chip turnout paddocks are of a modest scale covering 91 square metres and will not adversely impact the wider landscape character. The paddock's design, combined with the topography and existing built form, ensures minimal impact upon the surrounding landscape. This is evident on images on the bottom left and right, which show the site from the public right-of-ways to the east. There has, however, been degradation along the hedgerow along Glueson Road as a consequence of the turnout paddock. To mitigate this, a condition is recommended to enhance the hedgerow, reducing the visual impact from the roadside. The wood chip paddock and its post and rail boundary are deemed appropriate and compatible with the surrounding landscape. In conclusion, it is your office's assessment that the proposal aligns with the Herefordshire Local Plan, the Woolhope Neighbourhood Development Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. The application is therefore recommended for approval in line with the committee report.
Thank you. Now move to public speakers. Can I invite Mr. Slocum on behalf of Woolhope Parish Council to speak? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I probably won't take 3 minutes actually, because it was a long time ago we were here discussing this before, and at that stage the council the parish council voted in favour of application. I think it's changed significantly now, and at a recent meeting when this was brought up, the council voted to oppose the application, considering mainly being deficient around the hydrology report that was for the application originally. But I think the officer may have just mentioned that has now been adhered to, and a couple of the other issues were around the council noted in the minutes of that meeting were in relation to any waste management and traffic management plans, and to ensure that they had taken place. We have had assurances from the landowner that is taking place, and perhaps that's something that we could ask the council to ensure the plans in place originally around the site are carried out as they should have been on the original application, I think. Excuse me, I'm just lost my note on here. And yeah, it was really just the section that the gentleman just mentioned, that the certificate of lawful development has now been granted on it. It was extraordinary. I think that the council first started looking at this in 2020. And something that, just as a point to note, we were, as a parish council, invited to the site visit yesterday, and and a couple of us attended really with the view to answer any questions that some of the people on this council may have. And then it was deemed no one was allowed to speak to anyone else, which if it is the situation, perhaps you could explain to parish councils why that happens, because no one was allowed to speak to anyone. And we felt we'd rather wasted our time by going, but perhaps that's another issue. And just to point on record, Mr. Chairman, that the planning situations that come across our desk in Woolhope, as it were, although minor, I'm sure, on the scale of what it comes across generally, but the whole system must be simplified and made more efficient as a view from the parishes. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just inform you on the point you raised, that the planning site visits are there not to debate the relative merits, so that is to take place at this meeting. We don't hold debates at there. We're merely to look at the site and to find out what the site is. That has always been the case, and I assume will always be the case, because it's this body that actually makes the decision, not those that happen to turn up at a site meeting.
Appreciate that. It was why we were informed about it, so we attended thinking that we needed to be there.
You know, that
Just
has
a matter
always
of-
been the case. There are loads of parishes throughout the county and throughout the country that are
Sure.
the same as it's the standard procedure.
Appreciate that.
Right. Thank you. And now can I move on to Mr. Willis, Mr. Lloyd, the local resident, to speak in objection to the planning application. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that it's possible to look at the photographs and the planning application in front of you, and to do so in isolation may be the correct thing to do, but it's not quite the truth of the situation. This is an application at the end of a long series of applications. This site qualifies perfectly as one of creeping development. And when it came before the committee, and as has been explained to you, there were several, I think 9 in all, stables being applied for. And at that meeting, there were 2 very significant items agreed by this committee. One was that a series of reports should be prepared, including a full ecology report, waste management report, landscape officer's assessment, and a hydrology survey, and from my point of view, even more important, a traffic management plan. And when the certificate of lawful development occurred, those had at that time failed to materialize. And I would urge this committee to recognize that these 2 stables and the turnout paddocks are the culmination of a whole series of developments on this site, and therefore the need for these reports is as important, if not more so, than they've ever been. So I think I'd first of all like to urge the committee to make sure that they are conditional on any permission that you grant. I'd also like just to refer to the site meeting. I didn't attend, but I can see by the photographs that those of you who did may have been struck by the kind of bucolic nature of where it is and how sparsely populated. If you look at the history of this series of applications, you'll note that it has nearly 40 people who commented and objected to this, which speaks to the kind of seismic impact that this development had on a sparsely populated area. And so the effects of it are quite widely felt, and no more so than in its impact on traffic. And I live on a road which I have to acknowledge the applicant has volunteered to take the traffic off. I think that needs to be codified and made absolutely clear and enforceable. In the last 3 months, I think 2 vehicles have left the road. A couple of weeks ago, a lorry came off the road and rolled down the hill, and the driver's lucky to be alive. A fuel lorry several years ago suffered the same fate. The road to the northeast, Glowsonwood Road, is wholly unsuitable for commercial traffic. It's a metalled farm lane, and I think, to my knowledge, it has certainly given way under the weight of lorries on 2 occasions, and we're extremely lucky there was no loss of life. I would like to see that management plan put in place as a part of this application. Finally, I'd like to say that this site is wholly unsuitable for the area that it's put in, and it is putting the local road system under a lot of pressure. It's creeping development, it's overdevelopment, and wholly unsuitable for the traffic that it generates. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I invite Mr. Willis, who is online, I believe. Have we can we see who is the applicant's agent, to speak in support of the application?
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you, but I'm.
If you'd like to see me, that's up to you. Thank you, sir. If you're ready,
Yes,
I've got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just to return to the comments from Mr. Lloyd, let's just be absolutely clear that the stables overall have planning permission from your council. So to describe it as being wholly unsuitable and all the rest of it, well, it's got planning permission, and the addition of these stables and these turnout paddocks don't change any of the transport impacts or the waste impacts. There's just a few more horses, but broadly it's the same thing. I was a little surprised. We have submitted, as requested, a waste management plan and a traffic management plan, which our client is very happy with. They haven't appeared in the conditions, and as Mr. Lord suggested, perhaps they ought to be, and maybe that's something the committee would like to attend to. On the matter of the conditions, it's been very helpful to hear from the case officer this morning that in terms of landscaping, the issue is, as I understand it, the roadside hedge. There is a new hedge planted here. There is scope for more planting within the hedge. We're very happy to do that. So we just like it minuted, just make it clear that in terms of landscaping, that's what you're asking for, is for that roadside hedge to be thickened up and maintained, because that's absolutely fine. There is a condition that requires details of surface water drainage. Well, in terms of the turnout paddocks, there is no difference. They're porous. The rainwater falls on the paddock, it soaks into the ground. And in terms of the stable yard, you've already heard from the case officer that the stable yard itself is already lawful, and that includes the existing drainage. And I've sent photographs to the case officer showing that there are gullies in the middle of the yard, which then are connected to a soakaway within the site. So I would suggest that that condition requiring those details to be submitted is an unnecessary condition. There's no change in the fact that these extra stables are going to be standing on this concrete yard. It's the same amount of rainwater going into the same gully and then going to a soakaway on the land. It would seem to be an unnecessary decision. So I commend the officer's recommendation to approve. Members might like to discuss the conditions in terms of traffic management plan, waste management plan, and drainage, and also to confirm that there are a number of external lights on the site. I've sent those details to the case officer. He's got a number of photographs. They are all operated on PIRs, so they only come on when they're necessary. No further lighting is proposed, so we've got no issue with the lighting condition, as long as it's not retrospective, as long as we don't have to submit details of things that have been there, well, for the past 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Thank you. And now can I ask that the members, public speakers, return to the public area? Thank you. Gallery. Thank you. Councillor Durkin is the local member for this item. He speaks first and then has the right to speak at the end of the debate. He does not have a vote. He has 10 minutes limit on the sales. Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for coming, those that attended the site meeting yesterday, to look at the wonderful old Gore ward of mine. I support businesses and their expansion, but without planning control, I have concerns, in particular about elements of this planning application. I asked the committee to refuse the application. You have noticed the last number of objections to the application have been on lawful development, the 4-year rule, pardon me. You will also note, as has been spoken of earlier, that the parish council now have concerns. Looking at the planning history, you will understand that some of these applications have been achieved through retrospective applications, essentially building at risk and not through requesting approval. And it was the construction of these stables and the concrete yard that the planning committee was considering on the 31st of August 22. The outcome of this committee meeting was a deferment to require to provide reports before decisions could be made. In the meantime, between August 22 and now, no reports I have seen have been received. That's 2.5 years. You will have seen from the officer's report asking for reports in a few months' time. However, we have the opportunity, this unique opportunity, to regard the enabling proper consideration, to stop the clock, to renew and ensure that a timely and proper audit of the landscape and environment impact for this beautiful and unique part of the area be addressed and protected. This can only be achieved by having a planning application with the reports up front and not going to the certificate of lawfulness. I have deep concerns about the recent unchecked and non-prior permitted expansion of this business and its effect on our beautiful landscape. I agree with the officer's report that the 2 stable blocks will have a cumulative impact on the site, as in the officer's report at 624. Overall, I think the recommendations of the planning officer are, of course, sensible and needed at 414 and at 415. And this we're talking here about the hedges, etc. However, to provide a positive cumulative effect, I refer to core strategy LD1, where development proposals should be, among other, conserve and enhance the natural, historic and scenic beauty of important landscape and designated areas. This area is part of the Markle Ridge and Woolhope Dome, a unique geographical area created some 250 million years ago. And the application site is only 250 metres from the AONB. It's the gateway. We are unable to appreciate the effect on the overall conservation, restoration and enhancement as required in CS Core Strategy LD2. This is a sensitive area, and under 1B, it asks for development that would be liable to harm of sites of special scientific interest. I reiterate, this is part of the Markle Ridge and Woolhope Dome, internationally recognised and important in geological features. This protection may only be decided by careful consideration of any planning application with professional reports before any work is done, and not with the passage of time, and not relying on any one person's opinion or unilateral action. Essential information prior to construction is paramount in this decision making of any application, and not building at risk, and to achieve lawfulness due to the passage of time, as I said. With regards to the travel plan, there is a requirement for access to the site for large vehicles to approach and leave the site on towards the B4224. However, the travel plan, although it asks for those attending the site not to use north and northeast routes, some do, and you will see from photographs what happens when you do. And I've got two photographs I've submitted this morning to your committee members, and looking at them, you see one where a lorry went off, the ballast lorry went off the side of the road, rolled over 3 times and ended up in the paddock at the bottom, and another one on the other side of the page was where another vehicle came down Closonwood Road, a high vehicle, and damaged the trees environmentally, taking branches off. And this was some time ago, little time ago. Now I don't know if these vehicles were coming to the stables. I don't know, but there are often some vehicles that come down Closonwood Road to go to the stables, and they will suffer, hopefully not, the same potential risk. If we look at the safety of vehicles and pedestrians, on the 2021 plan, on item 2, it states the applicant will instruct drivers of HGV vehicles in their bracket over 3.5 tonnes. I would ask that, because of the roadway, its configuration, I would ask that the weight limit be reduced in the travel plan, not to be considered as 3.5 tonnes or more. So it's evident that HGV vehicles are using this road at a risk of doing environmental damage and indeed leaving the road. By having the reduced weight limits and strong enforcement of vehicles attending the stables, the risk may be reduced. I also look at the number of horses that have now risen from the considered 35 up to 61, I think it is now. And that's nearly a 100% increase. That must surely have an effect on the vehicles and people that actually go to the site just to service the needs. The farrier goes there twice a week. The vet twice a week. I've been informed by this. Horse owners come and return to the site. Feed lorries for 61 horses. Conducting client tours of the facility. Also going to and from the stables to the race meetings. That involves an awful lot of traffic as well. So with nearly 100% increase in animals, the attendance is by all required for the well-being of the horses and is paramount, but must surely have increased and deserves to have further consideration. The travel plan made meaningful and regiment such damage to the environment, property and those involved in driving for and on behalf of the business. Finally, on waste management, there is just around the corner a large amount of residue from horses in the stable, which is just laying in the line in a field open for all to see. There are other businesses around this area that rely on tourism, and this is not a good advert for Herefordshire when this stays there for years. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a plan put together for waste management to take the detritus off the site to a place in Ross-on-Wye. This was not included in the travel plan. So we must look at this because it has an effect with them rotting down on what happens in the aquifers and below ground. So my request today is that this application be refused, not for NIMBYism, but because we need to look at the actual environment that the place is living in, the stables are living in, look at the natural diversity of what's going on, hedges of course, and making sure that it is the right place, because it's very large. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Councillor Durkin will have the right to speak at the end to sum up the debate and speak then. Can I now invite debate? Councillor Simon? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask for some clarifications, first of all, from perhaps legal, from Mark and from the case officer? We've heard various things from the applicant and Mr Slocum from the Parish Council with regard to what has been supplied with the application and what is within the conditions or not within the conditions. As I understand it, there are conditions for a transport management plan. Has that transport management plan been received by us? And do we have a copy of it?
So yes, Councillor Simmons, nobody was going to speak, I was going to jump in anyway. So a transport management plan was received in February of this year, and that's the comments on which the highways officer have commented. That I was just reading it again then, the transport management plan does include the manure management removal twice a year, and that was also considered by the highways team when they made their comments, as you can see in your report, and I give you a reference number if we get back to it. Yes, there is a condition. So the agent said there wasn't, but condition 2 of the recommendation does say development should be operated in accordance with the traffic management plan dated February 2024. So yes, we have had it. Yes, we have considered it, and yes, it is conditioned. In terms of the manure management side of things, there isn't a specific condition relating to that because that, as per the report, is something that's governed by DEFRA. However, those traffic movements have been considered as part of the traffic management plan. So hopefully that clarifies that side of things. And yeah, no, I think that was all.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, no, I'd seen the condition. I just was checking that we were content with it. We had it, contrary to what was sort of suggested. In terms of the legal situation, we're obviously dealing only with the 2 stables and the turnout area in this application. Does therefore the lack of provision at any point of a landscape or ecology management plan for the whole site fall away, that we can't then, because of this being cumulative development, request that that's provided? Because there is a difference between what the landscape officer in the report suggests and what you as case officer have suggested. And I just want to understand from a legal perspective where we stand as a committee with that. Thank you.
So in terms of Councillor Noonan, so in terms of mitigation of the impacts, so there's the particular issue, and my understanding of the hedge degradation, we could include that. There is a condition suggested in terms of condition 3, which requests a landscape scheme to be submitted and approved. And that does talk about including a scale plan, identifying the proposed planting, accompanied by written specifications of size, species, quantity, density, and cultivation details of that. I think that the difficulty is obviously what they were seeking previously was we're looking at looking at the full amount of stabling, and we were looking at how the addition of that on top of what had already been approved, and they were seeking a wider landscape management plan. But yes, you're right, we are down now looking at these 2 units, which my understanding is that those 2 units are set back behind the other ones that are already lawfully approved. So I think members could, we could limit it to looking just at that hedgerow, or we could look at looking at a wider scope of that. But I think there's obviously some the agent has already indicated that wouldn't be what they would be looking to do. It would be looking at the single hedgerow. Members obviously can direct towards that if they wish to do so. If there's particular elements you think these 2 stables are causing additional or harm or could have screening attributed to, then I think it would be good for you to articulate where that should be and make it quite specific to that and to those 2 additional stables, rather than the whole of what's there now, including those that are lawful. So yes, think about what what's actually being applied for here, the 2 stables and the turnout area.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I'll reserve to hear what other people have to say, but I'd like to come back on just generally my approach and understanding of all of this. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Mr. Chairman, it's a slightly difficult one. This is a site which I actually have known for about 40 years. The last time I was there, I worked out about 14 years ago. There were sheep in that shed, but anyway, that's time moving on. It's a totally unsuitable site for the operation that's being carried on. We all know that, but that is not subject to what we're discussing today. If this was still prime agricultural and these buildings were used, I suspect that they would have been expanded, because that's the way agriculture has gone. So I don't think the extra buildings that are there, I personally don't. I think that they've done a very good job of trying to screen them to also blend in the stables. We're talking about a green. I don't find that that's affecting the landscape at all. I think we just got to put reasonably tough conditions on this. I think you're absolutely right. The ward council, this creep. Also from the parish have said it's creep. But where do we stay? We can't stop this creep if the landowners don't abide by planning rules. So we're in a bit of a difficult one here. But I personally, I should be supporting the officer on this one, because I don't think there's a great deal we can really do about it other than put conditions on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I thank Josh Evans for his report and for conducting us around this cold and muddy site yesterday morning. I found the site visit really quite useful, because I don't know this site. I'm quite au fait with horses and stables, etc. But although this was a huge enterprise, but there we are. we were taking up the muddy hill to look at these turnout paddocks and the field shelters, or I think they called them windbreaks, didn't they? Which I understand the paddocks are on our application, but the windbreaks turnout field shelters aren't, which is odd. I'm quite happy to see horses in the countryside. I mean, it's part of the countryside, isn't it? But when it's a large enterprise such as this, with additional buildings popping up all over the place, then the owners really must follow the regulations. Otherwise, we end up in a position as we are today, with this strange application not covering all of it. I do confirm that the road system round there is pretty poor, and in fact I did come across on my way out yesterday a huge HGV pulling a trailer. Fortunately it was a bit of a wide section when we went past. It was ginormous. It would take up the whole of the road along there. God knows where he was going, but so I can sympathise with the residents' concerns. What do we do with the development there that's not covered by previous permissions, but it's been built anyway? And so the two pairs of stables we saw yesterday, they're no problem. They're at the back of the other stables. You can't really see them. They don't impact on the area. But maybe we should be looking at enforcement action on the parts of the development that are not covered by previous planning commissions. And I think we should be considering removal of permitted development rights to stop this happening again in the future. Councillor Durkin was quite right saying that large vehicles heading in that direction should be limited somehow. I don't know quite how, because I noticed in the report that the manure generated by these 60 horses will be removed twice a year. Now, 6 months worth of manure for 60 horses is a huge amount, and they will require large HGVs with skips on the back, I would imagine, to remove this stuff. And so that's what we're going to be faced with twice a year, is a fleet of trucks coming in, removing the manure. Not much we can do about that. Councillor Thomas was quite right. It's a bit of a mess, but unfortunately there's not much we can do about it. If we refused it, it would certainly go to an appeal, and we would lose on
I'm afraid your
appeal.
time is up, Councillor.
It's always the way, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Just a couple of things on that. One is that we are aware yesterday following the site visit that there were further unauthorised structures, and that has been passed to the enforcement team. There aren't permitted development rights that they are benefiting from, so anything that is done that is development does require planning permission, so can't go away and remove those. But yes, I agree. We will pass it on to enforcement and take that process through.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for arranging the site visit yesterday. What I found most informative was the journey there and the journey back. And it seems that from the objections on the planning search application portal, the vast majority of the objectors are concerned about the traffic. Some have even provided us with pictures showing, as was mentioned before, where a truck or a digger or a tractor has occupied the entire width. Walkers are intimidated, they can't walk safely down there, and other traffic can't. I'm wondering if actually the stables is going to inadvertently destroy itself. It'll end up destroying the road. It'll end up that traffic, not the stables, but the traffic that seems to be generated by not only that, there is another stables further up, and by the other businesses on this road will end up destroying the road anyway. And that will cause a huge failure if the road collapses and they can't get feed to their horses. I don't know how they've provided for that. And is it our responsibility as a planning committee to consider the state of a public road which goes past an area for residents and other businesses? Is it our responsibility to take that into consideration and say, well, this development is heading or is going to contribute to the failure of that road.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. That's an interesting point of view. Right. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I too found the site visit yesterday very instructive. It's an area that's adjacent to my ward, so I'm quite familiar with the Markle Ridge and the Woolhope Dome. It is a very beautiful landscape, and this development is nestled in a fold in in a valley in the landscape. That said, I mean, we can clearly see from the planning history of this site that there have been a whole series of planning applications which have timed out, or retrospective applications for development that's come forward without permission, which have timed out and resulted in orders consenting to them. I feel that over time we have been failed by our own process on this, and as a consequence of that we have failed the local community, and as councillors we have been failed and frustrated in terms of being able to properly permit and condition the development of this site over a number of years. This, of course, is a hobby horse of mine, and I'm sure other members of the committee are equally concerned about the impact of our inability to act in a timely manner when it comes to enforcement. Those who went on the site visit will have noted the large car park that is present on site, which is clearly needed in order to service the number of staff and other visitors who attend this site. I note that there is a traffic management plan and that we're conditioning to insist that that the site is operated in accordance with that. The turnout areas have been built very close to the hedgerow, which is resulting in horses grazing the hedge and damaging it. And I think we need to stipulate very clearly in the conditions that we make that the turnout edges are pushed back from that, and that the hedge is protected in that area. And also there is a monoculture of beech hedging which has been replanted in an area of hedgerow which is adjacent to the 2 stable units that are part of this application. And I think in terms of getting an appropriately diverse hedgerow replanted in there, and as I understand it, that was a piece of hedgerow that was taken out again without permission and replanted, but not necessarily giving the diversity that we would look for. I would like to see those as part of the conditioning that we have. It's disappointing that this site has been developed retrospectively in the way that it has. I wonder whether we are flogging a dead horse in hoping and expecting that the landowner will behave differently in future to the way that they have behaved in the past. We are perhaps trying to drag a horse to water, and as we know, we can't necessarily make that horse drink. However, it is my hope, if not my expectation, that the landowner will conform to the requirements of the planning process in the future. And I thank the chairman for his indulgence in allowing me to go on a little bit.
I was lucky I couldn't get my microphone finger on it. But I've been waiting for horse references within that. We've had 3 now. I'm just waiting for the horses bolted in reference to the fact of retrospective. Yes. Right, I've got no other speakers.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yep.
Lots of great points, I think, have been made by the councillors, so I don't propose to cover any previous ground. Just want to bring one small suggestion, that is that the muck heap might be removed a lot more frequently than twice per year.
Right, are there... Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back and fully in support of Councillor Harvey's comments. It is extremely frustrating where we find ourselves with the lack of timely action in the supply of reports by the applicant and his agent in the initial committee response. I won't go on about that, but I do have concerns about whether we should be looking at a more stringent condition for site-wide landscape management plan. I understand your reasons for not, but I would like to see, because we have not captured the impact on landscape because of the Certificate of Lawful Development, but this is cumulative development on top of that, and therefore I think that triggers a need to understand the scheme as a whole. And I would really like to go back to what the landscape and ecology officers were saying about the need for site-wide landscape biodiversity plan and an updated LEMP that had previously been supplied. So again, it should not be beyond the wit of the applicant and the agent to supply that updated given the change in the circumstances on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an important point. Right. Are there any other speakers? Can I have someone wish to make a proposal for Councillor Thomas and Councillor Baker? Sorry, which? Whichever. All right. Councillor Baker then is nearest me.
To support the officer recommendation for approval.
Microphone.
I support the officer recommendation for approval.
Right. Is that
with concerns?
Councillor Simmons? Councillor Simmons.
Can I just confirm, is that proposal taking into account my suggestion for strengthened conditions? I don't know whether Kelly or case officer could clarify that, please.
I can't clarify if it's proposed, but I can, because I'm not doing that bit. But in terms of that strength and condition, I think it's difficult to require for this application a site-wide review of that. I mean, we can obviously refer back to the previous one and do the additional bits. So we can possibly look at the management intentions for the hedgerow, roadside hedgerow corridor, and the hedgerow for the paddocks and turnout area. As Councillor Harvey suggested in the replacement of that, of the hedgerow at that point. But I think actually reviewing the whole site, which is much wider than these particular ones, where there is already landscape management and landscape schemes approved for those, as part of this application, I don't think would be reasonable. I don't think it would meet that test. Obviously, if there's other applications that are coming in, then that's something we can, revisit at that point, and look at that in combination effect. I think the difference with this is those two, particularly those two stables, are, they don't have that wider impact, and it's quite difficult to say that they do. So I don't think it's reasonable to impose it in this instance. I think it would be a much more bespoke condition in respect to the bits that affect this actual application as suggested. But members can, obviously, if you can obviously take a different view on that if you wish to.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
All right. The seconder. Can I say, I think it puts members in some difficulty over retrospective applications. The fact that we have little or no powers to deal with these matters. The powers that be inform us that we are not to take that into account, the fact that it's a retrospective. But I do think there ought to be some restraint on people using the system in order to use creeping planning gains by using the laws that protect those that do it retrospectively. But anyway, that's for another place and another time. But we've got a proposer and a seconder. Is there no other one wishes to speak? Then I ask the local member.
Chair, can I just be really clear with the proposer and seconder as to whether or not they are minded to go with the suggestion that we have a site-wide update of the landscape management plan, or whether it is limited to the areas immediately adjacent to the two bits of development which the planning application actually covers.
I mean, our planning officer gave us slight steer as to the unlikelihood that we would be able to uphold that. But
We can look at the wording of the condition if you wanted. So we can say it should be submitted, a landscaping scheme shall be submitted and approved. That shall be informed by, potentially should be informed by a review of that. But I think insisting upon it, I said Mark Sorrentino wants to come in as well, so we just take a legal view.
Yeah, can I just, sorry, can I just come in on that as well? I just want to say from the legal side that I'm in agreement with Kelly. I think the difficulty with a site-wide, with insisting on a site-wide plan is that it's going to be very difficult to justify that as being reasonable as a condition. I just wanted to clarify that from the legal side, that I'm fully sort of in conjunction with Kelly's view on it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fine. I just want us to be really clear on what we're voting on.
it's great. Now, can I go now to, are there the case officer or the planning officer wish to make any further comments?
No, nothing to add.
No, then I'll go to Councillor Durkin to make his summing up.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be dodging about a bit here, but what I would say is thank you all for the debate. Disappointed in what we are restricted, and I agree with you, Chairman, about the retrospective applications, etc. It doesn't. It just gives carte blanche to anybody to do what they want in the countryside. And I agree with Councillor Simmons and Councillor Harvey. I thank them both very much for their detailed analysis. My point is, it's been over many years before a reasonable assessment has been made of the landscape and the environment in that area. We've got the concrete platform we've stood on yesterday with those 9 stables. Would that have been permitted in approach to an AOMB on Willow Dome, Muchmarkle Ridge? Would that have been permitted if it had gone through the normal situation of applying for permission? I don't think so, but that's my opinion. I would ask for the landscape review, or make the wording as tight as we can, because we've got to get on top of this with regard to making it suitable for the environment, especially with the travel plan. And I'm delighted to work with the transport officer with regard to the number of horses that are there and how the tonnage and the access should be actually enforced. It is a quick development for a number of years, and it's disappointing that it's totally passage of time, to quote Kamala Harris. And I also agree with the recommendation that the waste, if I can call it that, is taken away more than twice a year. It is humongous. It took, I understand, well over a week, maybe 2 weeks, some years ago, to remove what had been gathered about 4 years ago, to take it away to another farm. So this is a prescient problem, because it is an area which deserves to be protected, deserves under international law. And finally, Chairman, if I might finish your day for you and say, with regard to my point, his refusal is nay. Thank you.
I think we've hit an all-time low. Right, and now we have before us the proposer and a seconder of the resolution as outlined. Can I ask those in favour, please show reluctantly. Those against? Abstention. One abstention. Right, that is now carried, however reluctantly. And now we move, can I just have a 10-minute break? I don't think we're, for the changeover, we haven't got the public speakers for the next item in. Yeah. Okay, 10 minutes. sign, please. Thank you. Now we come to the second application, item 7 on the agenda. Application before us is land at Stretton Suggers Pool, Swainshill. Proposed self-build dwelling and garage. Can I ask that the public speakers take their place in the speakers' tables? Thank you. Can I now ask our officer, Mr. Josh Bailey, to make the presentation, please?
Too many Joshes today, isn't there?
We've been joshing this morning.
Thank you, Chairman. This application before members seeks full planning permission for the erection of one 4-bedroom self-built dwelling house with detached garage to the west of Sugwers Pool House. The site is located to the western end, towards the western end of Sugwers Pool Lane off the A438 Sugwers Pool Junction, approximately 4 miles west of Hereford City Centre, and can be denoted by the red star on screen. I just briefly draw members' attention to the publicised schedule of updates when there has been one further letter of representation, which I believe is self-explanatory and obviously raises no new material planning considerations, and some additional information from that of the local highway authority following a query raised during yesterday's site inspection for those who were able to attend. Next slide, please. On screen now is the site location and the existing and proposed block plans. The site, as members can see, is located to the north of Sugwers Pool Lane, which also forms part of a public right-of-way in a predominantly residential area, as members will have gathered on their visit to site yesterday. And the next slide. The application site, as members can see on the photographs on screen, comprises part of the established garden of Sugwers Pool House, which, as you can see there on the screen, photograph 1 is taken from the existing gate that members passed through yesterday when we visited the site, and then photograph 2, which is taken from the western boundary looking east towards Sugwers Pool House, so members who are unable to attend can get a bit of an appreciation of site characteristics, which if we then go to the next slide, members can sort of see some further examples of photographs of the boundary. So that top left photo is again taken from that gate as we went through yesterday, looking north. The bottom left photograph is taken just past the gate, looking back towards the site. And then finally, that bottom right photograph is taken from the south east of the site, looking back towards the site itself and its relationship with the property next door. As members can probably gather, for those who attended yesterday, the site comprises a very much largely grassed area and is bound by a mixture of conifer hedgerow, post and wire fence, high close build fencing and trees to the north, which are beyond the application site. And the next slide, please, which will bring up the proposed site plan. I'll just leave that for a couple of seconds for members to take in. And the next slide, which shows the proposed elevations and floor plans of the proposed dwelling and garage. Of course, these are all in the officer report as well. And the next slide, which shows the visibility from the proposed access onto Sugwers Pool Lane, which would be formed by the removal of the Leander hedgerow and placed with a more appropriate native species plants and aligned behind the visibility displays, which you can see are dashed on the proposed site plan there, so you get an understanding of that. And the next slide, which are then a handful of photographs which are taken all looking westbound towards the application site, which gives an essence of the varying width and and the sort of width of the Sugwers Pool Lane and a sort of more sort of general character and appearance of the area. So just going through the photos quickly, that one with the yellow dot is just taken just to the immediate east of Sugwers Pool House, and as I said, it is fairly self-explanatory in terms of the colours and photographs. Just to draw your attention to the one with the red dot, which is the middle image at the bottom slide. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a site which has recently been allowed on appeal for 2 dwellings by the Planning Inspectorate, which members will see a copy of that appeal decision as Appendix 1 attached to the officer report. And I've also included the annotated image in the officer report to show the relationship between the appeal site and that of the application, which is before members, as well as the approved site plan on that appeal decision, so members get an understanding of what the Planning Inspectorate has obviously allowed and sort of can have that appreciation. And next slide, which is obviously now heading back up towards the junction then of the Sugwest Pool junction with the A438, in which I've added also there the visibility splay assessment, which was submitted with that appeal decision, so members can obviously get an understanding of when we're sort of talking about the visibility splays and the numbers which are being talked about, where that's come from. And then there's just a couple of photographs there, again, from the more sort of easterly junction, and then also from the bottom right photos, that of the more westerly junction. And then the final slide, which is there, just the summary there of the material planning considerations before members, which broadly follows that of the officer report headings. And as recognised in the officer report, the application is largely predicated on the allowing of the recent appeal for 2 dwellings. And I appreciate members how they may feel about the allowing of the appeal, but this decision must be respected as a material planning consideration in your decision making on this application. The officer appraisal has considered all relevant technical considerations, and your officer views that the application accords with the relevant policies of the adopted development plan, this comprising the council's core strategy and that of the Made Stretton Sugwest Neighbourhood Development Plan, including having regard to the appeal decision and the findings of the planning inspector. In applying paragraph 11C of the NPPF as revised in December 2023, approval is recommended subject to the suggested planning conditions as set out in the officer recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now I invite public speakers. Can I invite Mr. Robertson to speak on behalf of Stretton Sugwest Parish Council? You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I'm John Robinson, Vice Chair of Stretton Sugwest Parish Council. For many years, the Parish Council has opposed any additional development in Sugwest Pool Lane. The principal concern was exit visibility onto the A438. Also significant was the danger for traffic from Hereford turning right as following traffic approaches round a blind bend. We are aware that the development proposed in the nearby paddock has been permitted on appeal. We are also aware that there are technical arguments about the acceptability of the visibility displays onto the A438. We continue to believe that further development increases the traffic risk factor. Also, the nature of the single track and adopted lane is not suited to increased traffic levels. Additionally, the Wye Valley Walk goes down the lane with consequently more risk to pedestrians. Should Herefordshire Council be minded to support the application, we would propose 2 mitigating factors. 1, the removal of the hedge fronting the fence to the west of the exit onto the A438. Secondly, provision of passing places at the proposed development site, as well as a passing place at the proposed paddock development when it is resubmitted for reserved matters. Finally, we believe that Herefordshire Council should not be encouraging development in communities where there are no facilities. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask Mr. Vaughan, the applicant's agent, to speak on behalf of the application? You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman, councillors and planning officers. This application has case officer support, no objection from Highways, and until now, no formal parish council representation or a recommendation, only a comment. This application is not about design, mass, scale, layout, landscaping, or even the principal development, because all of those have been accepted by Herefordshire Council. It's simply about the access junction onto the A438, which was firmly put to bed by the planning inspector during the successful appeal on the application between Great House and Rose Cottage. Paragraph 6.6 of the officer briefing document states, verbatim, in allowing the appeal, the planning inspector concluded that the existing access and visibility was acceptable and that there are sufficient passing places between the site and the junction of the A438. It effectively negated the concerns that the local planning authority had in respect of highway safety. I also refer you to paragraph 6.33 6.44, 6.66, 6.67, 6.68 and the recommendation for approval by the case officer. The planning inspector also clarified that the proposed housing numbers stated in the NDP are not maximums. Therefore, future development within the defined settlement boundary is acceptable. It has been mentioned that this application will result in an additional dwelling along Suggers Pool Lane. That is actually incorrect. Suggers Pool House was previously 2 joined cottages before it was converted into 1 dwelling prior to my client's involvement. I'd like to play out a scenario. Yourselves, the planning committee, overrule the recommendation for approval. Our client submits an appeal with costs to the Secretary of State. There are 2 possible outcomes. Outcome 1, appeal upheld because Herefordshire Council now support the application and have stated refusing this current application on similar grounds may lead to an appeal being made and a real risk that this could not be successfully defended. Herefordshire Council will have costs to pay because of the successful appeal referred to in the briefing document. Outcome 2, the appeal is miraculously dismissed. Herefordshire Council have now been effectively told that the access is not safe because it can't be safe for 18 dwellings but not for 19. It's either safe or it's not. Herefordshire Highways will have no choice other than to redesign the junction because if there is an accident, Herefordshire Council will be implicated by allowing a now known unsafe access junction to be used. Once the access is redesigned and safe, our client resubmits and gains approval because there is now not a single reason for refusal. Please think about this carefully before making your decision. This application has officer support, no objection from Highways, no objection from Ecology, and no objection from the Parish Council, only a comment. How could an appeal be defended on the basis that the committee voted against all the recommendations and Highways specifically have not objected? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And now I'll move to the ward member, who's Councillor Taylor. Sorry. Oh, if you could just go back to the public gallery, please. Right. As I said, Councillor Taylor is the local ward member for this item. She speaks first and then has the right to speak at the end of the debate. She has 10 minutes, if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express my concerns with regards to this planning application. I will be brief. In light of the appeal, which subsequently allowed planning approval for the land between Rose Cottage and Great House, I believe that the applicant has reapplied due to this judgment, hoping the application will gain permission. The land between Rose Cottage and Great House is located at the top of the lane, where the inspectorate decided that passing spaces were adequate. However, this reapplication is further down the lane, where not only does the lane narrow considerably, but visibility is somewhat restricted compared to the rest of the lane. This, in my opinion, raises concerns regarding intensification of traffic in an area absent of adequate passing places, therefore posing significant challenges for traffic flow. Vehicles may be forced to reverse considerable distance to allow others to pass. This could be considered an increasing risk, not only for vehicles, but also for pedestrian safety on the very popular Wye Valley Walk, which is what this lane is. In addition, the lane has been improved by local residents on self-help basis, and as such, any increased wear and tear will only exacerbate deterioration, especially with regards to heavy construction, delivery and service vehicles. Being at the bottom of the lane, potentially the increased use could cause damage not only to the lane, but to driveways that will be used for turning or passing. To mitigate some of these issues, implementing a designated passing place for traffic management would be essential. This addition of another dwelling will lead to an increase in traffic, resulting in more vehicles using the Suggers Pool Lane A438 junction. This could have severe impact on highway safety, particularly given the existing challenges at the intersection onto the very busy, fast-flowing A road. At this junction, the A438 has a 40-mile-an-hour limit. 40 miles an hour does not sound very fast, but inching your vehicle onto the A438 at this junction with restricted view is not the easiest or the safest option. Nor is it with regards to seeing the junction from the A438 heading towards Hereford. I'm amazed that there's not been any more severe accidents along this stretch of the road. In an ideal world, this junction would be optimised to allow for a safer merger of traffic. However, this is not possible, and concerns with regards to more traffic using this junction are still being raised. The committee should carefully assess the obvious potential risks to ensure that proposed development does not compromise the safety of all road users and pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor has the right to speak at the end of the debate and to sum up. Can I now move to open debate? Can I just say before we go here, just to remind members or advise the last public speaker that members are not kindly take to being lectured about the possibility of appeal and costs. We're well used to that, and it does your case no good to speak in that manner. Thank you. Can I now, having been present shortly after a fatal accident at that particular junction, I well know the risks that are involved in that site. Can we now move to debate? Councillor Foxton and Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Josh. Our planning officer recommends approval. The final decision of the appeal grants approval, whilst both acknowledge the main issue with this application being highway safety. The proposed house is substantial and perfectly located for a keen ornithologist and in keeping with the neighbourhood. But it was noted on the site visit that due to the size of the property, very little space has been left for a garden. And generally, a bit of garden and a better layout of garden is very desirable. Stretton Suggers Parish Council noted that the access road to the proposed new development might well create another passing space along the lane, which would be an advantage. Regarding highway safety, there was a fatality in 2002, and I read some improvements were made to the junction with A438. However, visibility at the junction remains extremely worrying. The speed limit is 40 miles per hour, but it's a fast road and many motorists exceed the speed limit. Also, being in close proximity to the road, when a car passes, it feels very fast. Not that I'm diminishing any of the worry there. I mean, one more property would create some increase in the traffic along the lane, but one additional property not unduly significant. I'm leaning towards approval, but keen to hear the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking for clarification from the planning officer on this. I'm looking at the highways public rights of way map, and I can see the main highways, A438, and then the lane is not marked as a council or highway. It's marked as a public right of way. So may I ask, who's responsible for making decisions about having passing bays and having a junction? Who owns the junction if that junction is actually going to a private lane?
I think that's the adjoining landowners. The adjoining landowners is a standard.
Yes, thank you. May I ask the planning officer?
Yeah, sorry. The lane is private lane that has a public right of way along it. The junction, I don't know. We'll try and find the highway extent on that. But the A438 is obviously adopted highway. The lane is private. Just need to establish what the actual boundary of that is. But I think history of that is that, you know, the works that could be done were done some time ago within that highway extent that could improve that. Beyond that, and in terms of passing bays and the like along that lane, it's in private ownership. So,
if I may just follow up on that. So it seems that the arguments about the poor access along that lane are down to lack of attention by the household owners along that lane, not by the council. So should it be the planning committee's requirement to judge on the access to that lane if it's not a council lane?
yeah, the policy does require a judgment, as you could have seen in both the report and the appeal about the intensification of use along that lane. There's lots of private lanes and accesses across the country really, whereby residents might own the rights to and share responsibility for that. In terms of making a judgment on additional people, additional residents or additional people, or additional movements on that, then that is a judgment for us to make, because you're approving additional use of that lane by the creation of the new dwelling or other use, depending on what the application is. So yes, we do need to take it into account.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I'm entirely sympathetic, having visited that site. Thank you, Josh, for taking us around. I'm entirely sympathetic to Councillor Taylor's words and representations from members of the public, and a reference from the speaker today about the danger and the risk at that access. However, our hands are really tied by that appeal decision. I really don't feel that we can go against that, and that is the only ground really that we could look at refusing consent on this site. It is within the neighbourhood development plan, and in a plan-led system, that is the basis for how we should be deciding. And with the removal effectively by the appeal decision of that access, I don't see how as a committee we can argue against the highways determination now. I do entirely sympathise with the community there that there does need to be improved safety works on the A438 at that site, and I think we should all be trying to support any moves Councillor Taylor makes to that stage. So thank you.
Here, here. Mr. Bailey, did you want to?
Bear with. I'm going to see if I can share. Might not be the case. I just turned it off. Anyway, the junction is in the highway extent. I'll take that off. I've turned the screens black as well. Oops. Anyway, the junction itself is, sorry, I've had to use Katie's laptop, it might not be. The junction itself is in the highway extent. It's in, yeah, so that the junction arrangement is, and then it starts, the private lane starts just sort of where we were standing yesterday, beyond that point down the lane.
Councillor Baker, and then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask Katie Jones, we've heard about this fatal accident 20 odd years ago. What are there any other statistics for accidents at that junction in recent times?
If I just refer you to the schedule updates, Councillor Baker, because that's got the most recent accident data. So,
could you remind me?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Obviously, I'm happy to repeat there today and what was said. Just give me 2 seconds.
Whilst you're looking for that, we've heard about the traffic movements down there. I mean, during our visit yesterday, and thank you, Mr. Bailey, for looking after us yesterday. I was a bit concerned that you didn't have a proper coat. I think maybe a whip round. But anyway, but there wasn't a lot of movement whilst we were there yesterday. And I'm wondering, the junction certainly was dreadful. Coming out of there, you take your life in your hands, I think. But if you're heading, well, whatever way you're going to be heading out of the junction, there's a hedgerow on the right, on the west side of the junction. And the representative of the parish council mentioned it, that maybe that hedge could be cut back. That would make a huge difference to the visibility displays. And I would imagine that that hedgerow would belongs to highways, I would think. But anyway, if we can make a note of that, I think would be a reasonable recommendation. I mean, the most dangerous bit there was walking out of the site along that extremely narrow footpath with those big lorries trundling by in excess of 40 miles an hour. But anyway, we've also heard about the developments just up the lane that were allowed on appeal. And this site is smaller than that one. That was for 2 houses, wasn't it? But this is a large plot, and it's suitable for a large house, and it's certainly a large house. I remember my old reporting sergeant said, if you can have one son, have a big one. So, but anyway, why would anyone would want to live down there anyway is beyond me, with those ranges right at the back, firing. I mean, it's non-stop. We've heard sometime, I think the ward member said to us that they're there sometimes on Christmas Day having a good shoot. So, but anyway, each to their own, I suppose. Not much we can do. Well, I think just recommend that we approve the application along with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas. Oh, sorry.
I'll just come back on the schedule update, so I'll just quote, further to a query raised during the site inspection meeting by members, a research of accident data by the local highway authority has been undertaken and has been no accident records for the A438 Sugwest Pool Junction over the preceding 5 years, brackets 1st 2019 to 10th for the 12th 2024, close brackets. The last accident recorded was in 2015.
Right. I well remember the fatal accident there, and you know, perhaps the inspector might have had a different view if he'd been present. Anyway, Councillor Thomas.
Just again, a query for highways. The previous application for 2 just up the lane, you recommended refusal. Have you changed your mind because of the appeal? Because obviously the conditions which you made your mind up 2 or 3 years ago haven't changed. So can you clarify that, please?
Yes, it's as a result of the appeal decision. We obviously objected to the original application for 2 dwellings based on highway safety. The inspector disagreed with us, and so we've been left in a position where we can't really object to this single dwelling application.
Let us hope we don't have a later fatal accident there, or a serious accident. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. And, you know, picking up on that point, I find it hugely frustrating that our highways team have successfully made a case in the past for development of this site to be refused on highways grounds, and that the recent appeal decision to allow a further 2 dwellings on this, it's not even a lane really, it's ended up being tarmacked as a consequence of significant incremental development, but it really is nothing more than a track with a public right-of-way along it. That has resulted in more induced traffic along that track. Logic would dictate that the argument for being concerned about the junction and about vehicle and highway safety would have been increased as a consequence of the appeal approving another 2 dwellings and all the consequent traffic movements associated with those. Whereas we are being told that actually, despite our own planning policy framework being such that we have been able to deliver a defensible refusal on this site previously, we now have our feet taken out from underneath us as a consequence of a planning inspectorate decision, and we're told that we are tied, and residents travelling along that road and people travelling along the A438 are just going to have to brace themselves for, as the report rather delicately puts it, more empirical evidence to demonstrate otherwise, as regards the unsafe junction, i.e. we're going to have to wait for people to be hurt and for there to be more accidents there before anybody can do anything. I guess what my question is, how much incremental development is too much? It's disappointing that we are not assisted in our decision making here by the neighbourhood plan and the way in which a settlement boundary has been drawn within that plan for that lane area. I would counsel neighbourhood development plan groups being very thoughtful about where they draw their lines in their neighbourhood plans. Otherwise, we're not in a position to be able to take assistance from those plans when it comes to these sorts of decisions. It's hugely frustrating, and I'm very annoyed about the whole thing.
I think we all are, to a large extent. Councillor Baker made a proposal. Was it seconded by Councillor?
No, well, I will second it because, as you say, our hands are tied, really.
Yeah. Right. Are there any other speakers? Can I now, do the officers wish to make any further comments?
No, nothing to add, thank you.
Okay. Come to the ward member, Councillor Taylor, to finally sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's rather disappointing that people's safety can't be taken into consideration because of an appeal by somebody that does not live in a locality. I'm very disappointed that these things aren't taken into consideration, and I believe that the planning department was right in their refusals in the past, and I do feel that our hands are massively tied, but I'd like to thank everybody for the consideration and debate on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now move to a vote? We have no other position. We have a proposal before us. Can I ask for those in favour, please indicate, however reluctantly. Those against? 2 against. Abstentions? No abstentions. Then that is carried. Thank you all for your attendance. Can I finally remind you that the date of the next meeting is the January the 22nd for the committee, and for the site visits the 21st, if necessary. Can I thank you all for your attendance, and can I ask that the live stream be closed? And a happy Christmas.